Well, hello, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me out there. We'll go ahead and get started in our transformation and trends in employee pay. So appreciate everybody taking the time to take some time out of their day to spend some time with me here today. So I'll jump in a little bit about what we're going to talk about. So we're certainly going to give you a little background on who I am, talk about the state of the union. So what's going on with employee pay? Even before COVID, there was a lot of trends and impacts to employee pay. And now couple that with everything that's going on in the COVID current state of the union. And then what does that mean when it comes to your employees? What are organizations interested in? What are the challenges as you address all of this, and then hopefully can walk you all through that. And I promise you at the very end, I'll give you a very brief overview of ADP, but that will be a minor portion of what we want to talk about today. I really want to focus on what we're experiencing at ADP, what our clients and prospects are coming to us, and hopefully share that along with some best practices and things to consider when it comes to employee pay. So I'm your speaker today. I'm Jeff Geese. I'm the Vice President of the Future of Pay and Payment Solutions at ADP. A little background on me. I have 20 years of experience here with ADP. I've worked in just about all of the various divisions of ADP. But over the last decade, I have worked for a group called Compliant Solutions. And I've focused on launching a few different product lines for ADP. I did some work in our mid-market with some of our standalone compliance solutions. I helped launch our research and development tax credits. I helped bring over our master tax acquisition and roll that product out. And now, about 2 years ago, I was tapped on the shoulder and asked to come over and lead our Future of Pay. And since for the last 2 years, I've been driving our digital wallets, future of pay, financial wellness, and then certainly, as I can imagine, everyone on the phone has been very focused on what does the world look like when it comes to employee pay as we emerge from the COVID pandemic. And so without any further ado, let me jump in a little bit to the state of the union. And so as I've been involved in payroll and employee pay and HCM solutions for the last 20 years, over my 20 years, there's been a number of disruptions that have impacted, business continuity. So back when I started, that was the .com bubble, which seems so long ago. We had a real estate crash. We had several major natural disasters, several stock market crashes, leading up to here. And then what we had now, which no one could have predicted, was COVID-19. But what I've learned over the last 20 years is that whether it is a stock market downturn, whether it is a large natural disaster, and now, which I'm learning, or impact of something like COVID, one thing has happened. Over those 20 years, consistently, things happen that impact businesses' ability to continue to operate in the way that they thought. And then with what I've focused on, it's impacted with not only how they pay their employees, but expectations of pay, and maybe some of those difficulties. And I will tell you, in my 20 years, and I'm sure a lot of people on the phone feel the same way, the impact of COVID, we look at pay and your employees' expectations around pay has been impacted like never before. So again, we already had a lot of pressure on organizations around pay because of shifting generations and the advent of all the new technology that's coming out. And those things were already putting a lot of pressure on pay. The very extremely low unemployment and this battle for talent, all of that. And now we have COVID. And as we emerge from COVID, what we're seeing is we're going to have a blending of kind of those traditional trends that had been putting pressure on pay, mixed with what are these expectations coming out of COVID, and then how do we address that, and what risk is out there for our organization. So let's take a quick look and jump into some of that now. So ensuring the wellness of your employees, financial and otherwise, and the continuity of your business. Well, before I jump into the slide, I think of this as you look at your own personal life in COVID. Had you known before COVID what was going to happen, what would you have done differently? And when I think of my own life, not to make light of it, but I wish I had more toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and cleanup Clorox wipes stocked in my house pre-COVID, and we'll probably hoard those things moving forward. But we learned as COVID hit, hey, if I'd known back then this was going to hit, what would I have done differently? Well, let's look at kind of that world of business. Before COVID, right, we had physical delivery, right, and so companies adopted FedEx packages to regional locations. They used the U.S. Postal Service to mail out these items. They might have had a lot of times in staffing and even in retail and restaurants, people come into the office to pick up their packs. And so there wasn't really a concern about high touch surfaces or putting people into high density locations or any of that. And now post-COVID, what organizations have realized is, hey, we need to adopt a touchless pay method. We need to have some of this flexibility for contingent and off-cycle pays, or even the ability to pay people for spot bonuses and things like that. And then what a lot of organizations have realized post-COVID is really need to take a closer look and adopt emergency pay, build some redundancy and some business continuity capabilities within my payment system. And so this is the shift that all organizations are feeling. And I feel like the pressure will come from a couple different areas. Certainly the executive boards and the shareholders, internal supervisors and management and executives will be looking at these. But more importantly, your employees will have a completely different expectation of how you pay them, and taking into account not only their financial wellness, but maybe also their physical wellness as well. And so let's just take a little bit of a closer look at that. The one thing that I think is clear to most organizations is they've got to avoid the reliance on physical delivery to get their people paid. A lot of people weren't aware, but as COVID hit, the U.S. Postal Service was on the verge of collapse. Certainly was experiencing delays as they had difficulty getting workers to come in and who's crucial. And if you think about this fact about the Postal Service, yes, it's for the government, and the government's going to do everything to ensure the mail goes out. But if you had a large processing facility for the United States Postal Service, and they had an outbreak of COVID-19 in that facility would have had to have been shut down for several days as everything was sanitized and cleaned up. And so if you think about being an organization that had hundreds or thousands of paper documents in there that had to get out to your employees when a COVID violation and a shutdown occurred, I think more and more people are realizing that not only that U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, UPS, getting stuff out is a hassle, but it goes beyond that because it's going to get into more of the physical wellness of their employees. And so what we're seeing is while we have to rely more on alternative ways to get payout, and by alternative, I mean not relying on physical delivery of checks, either going out through those services or people coming into the office, our employees are going to have this expectation around organizations adopting physical safety for their employees. Every company is focused on this now. I went to Home Depot for the first time since I've been locked down in COVID here in Georgia. And every single cashier has a plastic safety screen around them. So they're extremely focused on that physical safety of their employees. And if you look at our consumer lives and you see all of the steps organizations are taking to protect the physical safety of consumers, but then you think of a company who says, hey, I'm going to pay you with a paper check that you need to come into the office and pick up, or I'm going to print this, sign this, stuff this, hand it to a postal carrier. It's going to be handled in their office. It's going to be given to another postal carrier who's now going to deliver that to your house or to your apartment. And now you're going to take that paper check. You're going to go to a high density location like a check cashing stand or a bank. And now you're going to get a handful of cash that you now physically have to go into stores to use. All of a sudden you see there's a real disconnect between what's happening in our consumer life and the business life. And so employees are going to have this expectation, and we're already hearing it from organizations, is that we have to focus on all ways that we can keep our employees safe. And so some stats on the left here about how often paper money is handed around and how many different hands that goes through. But even for your employees that might get a direct deposit, think about the reliance on an ATM. I've used an ATM once or twice, and I actually wiped it down before I got there. But if you think about it, the average ATM has dozens of people, there touching it, wiping it down, using it. And so again, we've got to help our employees rely less on that physical, those high touch physical locations. And then also we need to help them avoid these other systems. And so if you think about it, don't go to a bank branch. But what I also think about is unbanked and underbanked employees that are used to operating with cash. And you think of the advent of things like Instacart and delivery of groceries. Well, employees that are struggling to enter the banking system in the digital world didn't have the luxury of having safer methods to order their food or get their groceries. Instead, they had to go into a grocery store. And if you think about the stat over here, even a small grocery store has 2,000 customers per day. And again, I don't think organizations pre-COVID ever really thought about what happens once I pay my employees, or how many times do we touch a paper check or even a pay statement. But now again, with what we've gone through, this is an expectation that your employees are going to have. And as an organization, how do you address that? Adopting touchless pay methods. This goes back to where you can get into trouble is when your employees have a consumer experience that's vastly different from the pay experience that you're giving. And the example I use of this is public supermarkets. So they came out with an article saying that they didn't accept Apple Pay at their stores. Well, when COVID hit, their customers were demanding that they have a touchless pay method. And so they added Apple Pay to all of their locations based on that demand. Well, if an individual says, "Hey, when I go to the grocery store, I want to have a touchless way to buy things," why wouldn't they have that same expectation of their employer to say, "Hey, I want to be paid in a touchless method as well. I don't want to have any type of physical document. I don't want to have to go to a bank. I want to be able to enter this digital world." And so more and more organizations are having to figure out, how do I link my pay to things like Google, Samsung, and Apple Pay? And how do I help my employees transition into this digital world? And are we prepared as an organization to move away from more traditional paper checks, paper negotiable documents, and all that? Are we prepared to make this transition to the digital world so that we can keep up with the expectations of our current employees? But even think about the post-COVID recovery. Right? We're no longer worried about 3% unemployment in this war for talent. But now as we bring employees back on and they come to interview with our company, what's their expectation of our company if we still are talking about paying with paper checks and using paper negotiable documents versus an organization who said, "Hey, we care about the physical wellness of our employees. And one of the ways that we show that is we have adopted this touchless or digital pay methods to do that." And so that expectation and that need to shift is putting a lot of pressure on payroll and HR executives as they think of post-COVID recovery and they think of how to address the ways and the means that employees are paid. Well, the other thing that's happening is when COVID hit, organizations realized that, hey, we might not have the redundancy in our pay systems that we need. Have we really thought about our business continuity plans? And listen, no organization could have predicted that something like COVID would have impacted them. But what's important is now that they know that things like these are out there or other things could happen, it's important that we take action and we shore some of these things up. And so companies are looking for redundancy, updating business continuity plans, looking at what is our disaster recovery process, especially around employee pay, as this become a vital area during COVID, right? And then what are our emergency pay capabilities? And on the right side, this is the majority of the calls and things that I've dealt with over the last 2.5 months is organizations that said, COVID hit, we had this desire to pay all of our employees $100 to help them through this and show we cared about them, but we had no real method other than our traditional payroll method to get that out there. And so we had no contingent pay capabilities, certainly off-cycle pay capabilities or moving money out there. Unfortunately, now as we're seeing the stream of terminations come from the COVID slowdown, right? Organizations like, oh my gosh, I've got employees all across the country. Different states have different requirements. How do I keep up with termination pay? And then things like the ability to do instant pay or even allow my employees early access to pay are becoming hotter and hotter topics. all of these ways that an employer can provide flexibility to their employees on how they get paid and how they access their pay. But at the same time, how do I build that redundancy, those backup plans, and all of those things that I need on the business side as well? And so if you think about just the pressure to make sure that payroll is right and employees are paid and the right perks are in there, combined with all of this pressure to now shore up my payment method and shift to the digital world, it becomes a big burden on organizations. And I think organizations are out there saying, hey, what are the options out here? And maybe what are the best practices and how can I look at doing this? And so I want to talk a little bit about that. But before I talk into kind of, hey, here's some options or what people are finding, I think it's important that we talk about, okay, it makes sense. Organizations want to help people get off of paper and get into, join the banking world or join the digital pay world. We want to have business continuity and recovery. We want to get rid of physical delivery of checks. And now with COVID, it's really pushing us as an organization to make those changes. The question comes up, then why hasn't everybody just made these changes? Right? If that's what we need to do, is we need to go to paperless and touchless, and I need to get my employees moved over. I'm going to push this as a harder thing, and employees recognize the need for it, and the company recognizes the need for it, then why don't we just make this transformation and be done with it? Well, there's a lot of risk that have to be considered when you're making this type of transition. And it's this risk that has really kept companies pre-COVID from making the transition, and what's going to slow companies down as they come out of this COVID recovery on making this transition. And so I want to focus on that from two different areas. One, what's the risk to this employee transformation? What's the risk to the business transformation? So if you think about the employee transformation, higher paid, financially secure individuals that have operated in the banking system or with credit cards and online, there's not a lot of risk for them in this transition. There may be no transition at all. And the biggest transition, I think, in my personal life is that I've started to use Instacart. I've signed up for Apple and Google Pay, which I never used those things in the past. And so I've made that transition. But let's think about the whole population that maybe is unbanked, and estimates are anywhere from 7 to 14% are unbanked, meaning they can't or don't have a bank account, and then the underbanked. So underbanked are people who are trying to enter the banking system, looking for a free bank account, free checking account, but haven't fully kind of adopted the digital age. And so if we think about that population, which really represents up to a third of your employees or more, that third of the employees need help. And so we can't simply say, hey, as an organization, we've decided that this is the way we're paying our employees. It's all digital, it's all paperless, it's all touchless. Here you go. Because your employees may not be ready for that same transition. And the last thing you want to do is try and say, hey, we're going digital and it's important to us, but leave those employees stuck. And so what those employees need is they need help entering the banking system. And so how do we help employees that are unbanked or underbanked, and how do we improve their life? And I'm going to get into kind of a journey that I think you should focus on. But first, let's just talk about this. What do you need to help that? Well, the first thing you do is you need a safe environment with no balance requirements, no overdraft or penalties. And there are plenty of products out there that can take someone who's unbanked or underbanked and provide them an alternate banking platform that doesn't have overdraft or balance requirements or even monthly fees. And so if you think about it, the first thing you're able to do for these employees is say, hey, we want to help you into the digital world. And the first step to getting you into the digital world is I'm going to help eliminate the average fees you pay to cash checks and operate in a cash environment, or I'm going to help you reduce traditional banking fees, showing you an alternative way to do your banking. And so that's step number one. But the other thing is, if all we did was say, hey, we're going to pay you in a digital world, yes, you know the benefits, we're going to put you in a safe environment, we're going to give you access to pay in a way that's faster, but we don't focus on what may have been those things that got our employees into difficulty in the first place. Why are they unbanked or underbanked, or why are they struggling? Well, they need tools to help them build better financial habits, right? If we focus on helping them enter the banking system, we help them save money, but maybe we don't focus on those other areas of their lives, that financial lives that need work. We don't provide those tools. We might not be making the impact we think on our employees. And so as you think about reducing the risk to your employees by transforming to a paperless or digital world, if you focus on that safe environment with little to no fees, and you focus on looking at solutions that have tools available to improve their financial lives, you're going to have the biggest impact on your employees, and you're going to reduce the risk that you experience. Now let's talk about on the business side. On the business side, the risk that you have when you go through this transformation, one of the main points of risk and what's kept most organizations from going digital or going paperless across all of their payments is compliance risk. And what's really changed in the world of pay is that when there was just a check or a direct deposit, the number of state rules and requirements out there were relatively simple and really were very similar state to state, and California being the exception. And what's developed over time as this whole fintech space and these alternative pay methods and pay cards and digital wallets have hit the scene is that now every state regulates employee pay differently. And so it's no longer so simple as saying, hey, I'm going to add another pay choice. Hey, I'm going to push out paper checks. Organizations have, especially multi-state organizations, have to be aware and keep up with all of the state by state regulations. And I equate this to no different than employment tax. The reason so many organizations don't want to do employment tax is because it's complex to try to understand all of the local, state, and other jurisdictions that are out there that make employment tax different, and it's different in every state. Well, unfortunately, in the world of pay, that same complexity has entered here, and more states are regulating this in different ways. And so the biggest risk to a company right now is, hey, I want to make this transition. My employees want this transition, but I can't take the risk that I get myself into a situation where I'm either going to have fines and penalty from the state, or potentially I'm going to open myself up to some potential litigation. And so there's a ton of compliance risk out there. And I think organizations are really struggling to find the right partners to help them with that compliance. But the other thing is, think of the risk that companies have short term when they say, hey, I've been pressured by employees, I've been pressured by my staff, this whole desire from the consumer world, I've got to go into a paperless environment. But for the time being, I still have to have the ability to print my paper negotiable documents and do all that. I mean, these transformations don't happen overnight. They take time. And so organizations also have a risk that, hey, as they try to make this transition, they've got to keep some of these capabilities internal to their organization. And that creates a problem for them. If they're struggling with the paper because of COVID, or they're struggling with that piece, and now they've got to make this transition, but they still have to manage that piece, then I think more and more organizations are saying, okay, it's not just about selecting a vendor and buying a solution, it's what's involved in that journey to get to the ultimate goal of maybe going paperless or digital or getting away from paper, and who can help me and what capabilities do they have. And then, of course, the last thing that I see the biggest shift going on here is so many organizations came to ADP and came to me and said, we cannot ask our employees to move away from paper because they're used to getting paid that way, and we're afraid that they'll leave and go seek employment elsewhere. And part of that is culture. Part of that, it was driven by the low unemployment rate, right? When we were sitting at 3.5% unemployment pre-COVID, organizations are like, I can't really do anything that's going to push an employee out or force them to seek employment elsewhere. And so there's still that risk out there, right? Just because the business wants this and most employees want this, do all employees want this? And again, the key to bridging that culture is finding a partner that will allow you time to make the conversion. But we've also got to really focus and educate our employees on what the benefits of the digital pay world can be. And again, it's beyond the COVID impact, right? Hey, we're going digital because we want to make sure you're paid accurately and consistently despite what might go on in the world. We want you to avoid high touch surfaces. We don't want to send you into a high density location to pick up your checks. And we certainly don't want to send you into businesses or high density locations to use your pay. And so it goes beyond that. It's also all of the employee level benefit that they can receive by moving into alternative banking solutions and dropping into the digital world. And so again, cultural risk can go away when you find a partner that will allow you time for that transition and then who will help you with the education of your employees. And what I will tell you, the most successful transitions that I have been involved in are when organizations take a very proactive internal marketing approach to how they introduce this transformation and how they introduce these new pay options to their employees. And the organizations that do that effectively and spend some time on that marketing piece and that education piece tend to get higher adoption rates, higher satisfaction rates, and ultimately hit their goals faster. But it certainly takes some time and effort. And again, at the same time that we're talking about doing this and all this marketing, every HR and payroll person on the phone right now or back at your business also has their other job that they have to do. So again, that's why getting that time to be able to do this in addition to all the work details and all the work duties that are out there are important. So let me jump into this slide because we've talked about what companies need to do. We've talked about that risk. And now let's talk about the actual execution of all of this. And so what I'm seeing is organizations are taking a look at their internal payment methods and saying, okay, I need to add these capabilities. I need to build redundancy. I need to have backup plans. I need to have business continuity. You know, for the most part, until COVID hit, my payment system ran fairly well. So let me start with payments and let me go ahead and see if I can't build in that redundancy and business continuity and get this knocked out. And all of a sudden, organizations look at what seems like a fairly automated process. And when they start pulling back that first layer and they look into what makes up their payment system, it all of a sudden becomes like this pile of spaghetti that's out here on the screen. And so the problem is most organizations have multiple bank accounts, potentially even multiple banks that they're sending direct deposit files to and payment files to. At the same time, the bank is sending back check reconciliation reports. There's positive pay files going back. I now have a vendor that I buy supplies from to print my checks and have my printers and my micro ink and do all of that. I ship out some of my stuff through UPS. I use the postal service for direct to my employees' homes. I may have someone doing my W-2s. For terminated employees, I do my other W-2s in my Infor system. And so, yeah, Infor takes care of a lot of this. But then I have banks, shipping, supply vendors, and the list goes on. And all of a sudden, that easy task to build some redundancy and disaster recovery and business continuity plans becomes 6 or 7 times larger when they start to see all the different touch points, all the different seams, all the vendors involved in this. And then layer on top of that, all of that compliance risk that I talked about. And all of a sudden, this becomes a very difficult process, much more difficult than organizations thought it was going to be. And so this task of trying to shore up this part of their business and add additional functionality becomes incredibly complex. And so that's something that organizations have to deal with. And it may be what your organization is dealing with between all of the vendors and people that are involved in the payment system. And again, hopefully we get back to post-COVID where we were pre-COVID, but my expectation, what organizations are coming to us is saying is that I can't go back to the old way I do things. I am now starting to dig into this and I'm seeing all this complexity, and it can be overwhelming or it can be difficult. But the good news is you can streamline all of this fairly easily, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But hopefully you're starting to get the picture, and maybe you're even thinking about your own internal systems and how many different vendors, touch points, interfaces, and integrations that are actually involved in this process. So let's step away from the business side and let's focus on the employee side. And really over the last 18 months, I have been working to help educate organizations, whether it be through thought leadership or this be involved in our own sales processes. I've done several podcasts. But what I believe organizations can do for their employees is, first of all, I believe that you can have a positive impact on the financial lives of your employees, and you can do that through the world of pay. And so I've, at ADP, we've kind of created this journey to financial wellness. And what we've done coming out of COVID is we've actually said it's a journey to digital pay. So remember that employee risk. Hey, we want these unbanked, underbanked, maybe even some of our banked employees to have different options. But again, how do we push them from where they are today to where we want them to be and have them view that as a positive? How can we use that as a retention tool? How can we use that as a way to attract talent? And how do we show our employees that, while we're cared about their physical wellness, we want to be caring about their financial wellness and helping them with this transition. So the first one I touched on a little bit, our number one goal is to reduce the real cost that employees face in the banking world. And not just the banking world, but paying bills and doing all of that. And so the average unbanked associate spends up to $1,000 a year in check cashing fees, in late payments, in money orders, in order to operate. That's $1,000 in real money. The average free checking account in the United States costs $40 to $50 a year. And so if we start with the premise that your underbanked and unbanked employees are spending $600 to $1,000 post-tax, right? So think of that as being net dollars to operate in the banking system. And if we as an organization can leverage this boom in fintech and these fintech applications to provide a company-sponsored alternative to traditional banking, and we're able to put that money back in the pocket of our employees, that's a great first step into helping them transition into the digital pay world and helping them improve their financial lives. And then once we put more money in their pocket, if we stop there, or all we did was say, hey, we're going to give you the ability to access part of your pay throughout the pay cycle, that's great. But if we aren't also focusing on why do employees need to access money mid-pay cycle, or why are our employees struggling in the banking environment? Well, what we need to do is once we get more money in their pocket, we need to help them focus on what's getting them into trouble. And so that's tracking their spending and helping them set budgets. So making sure that we are providing tools that will show them where they're spending their money, where the money's going out, and how they can control that spending and how they can set budgets so that money that we put back in their pockets can go further down the road to paying their bills and improving their lives. And then a big thing that COVID had shown us, and this was a big topic prior to COVID, is how little savings the average employee has. And the amazing thing about savings is it crosses almost all income levels. It's up to almost 70% of workers don't have $400 in savings for an emergency. And so once we put more money in their pocket and we help them to spend that better and set budgets, we want to help them find some mechanism to start saving. And the things I see people needing to save for are certainly rainy days and emergencies, but also things like rent, because typically for most employees, rent or mortgage payments, that's not covered maybe by one single paycheck. And so it's important that they have some mechanism to set aside that money throughout the month so that their rent's paid for at the end of the month. And so if we're able to do that, and we're able to show employees that by moving to this digital world, we can put more money in your pocket, we can help you form better financial habits, and we can give you a clean and easy way to start saving for emergencies and for your rent every month, think of the improvement in those employees' lives, but think about tying that improvement to your employees' lives back to your organization caring for them, back to shifting that culture to say, hey, we're not forcing you one way or the other. We as a company are caring more about your physical wellness and financial wellness, and we're looking for solutions that help solve for both of those things. But in order for us to solve for that, we need you to get on board in the digital world, and we're going to help you with that. And then I will tell you, there's a million technologies and tools out there that will help drive different behaviors. And so I think you'd be surprised if you haven't gone out there and looked at options, the types of tools that are available, and even the AI that will help people control their spending and see where they're spending and make suggestions and all of that. And so this is an important journey. And again, this takes time for your employees, but you as an employer have that ability coming out of COVID to shore up the physical and financial wellness of your employees and position that as a company benefit, and at the same time build that redundancy and flexibility you need in your pay system. And so again, that's what we're seeing. This is what organizations are coming to us now. At the beginning of COVID, organizations were saying, hey, I've got to figure out how to pay all my employees digitally in the next 2 weeks. And some people, we were able to help. Some people we weren't able to help. It's just too short a time frame to do that. But now I think we're starting to see this COVID recovery. We're starting to see organizations start to focus on how they can do things differently. And I'll tell you, about a month ago, a lot of universities were coming to us and saying, hey, we've relied on paper checks. We've never really focused on our student workers and how we improve their lives. And we're ready to start doing this. And now we're starting to see a trickle of organizations coming back and wanting to put these changes in place. So if you'll bear with me a little bit, I promise you I'm not going to make this a long sales call, but I do want to highlight that there's a lot of vendors out there that can help you, but I'll just show you briefly how we can help you. And so for us at ADP, working with your in-force system, what we're able to do is through a single interface is we're able to take on the complete payment system that you need to do all the things that you're looking to solve for. So what does that mean? Single interface to ADP, we handle your direct deposits. We handle your positive pay files, your check reconciliation. We will set up Wisely Pay, which is our digital wallet pay card platform to help your unbanked and underbanked associates. If you have a period of time where you need to print checks, we'll print paper and distribute those paper checks for you. And then I think the other thing, there's a lot of things you can read on here. We build in disaster recovery. We provide you off-cycle and compliant term pay solutions with that. And we have a system that is 50 state compliance to move you to electronic pay. And I know there's probably, if we were in an open forum right now, there'd probably be 4 hands that would go up and people would ask me about that. What I would tell you is that that's not just offering a digital wallet and direct deposit. There is a self-directed check that has to go with that. That is separate, and we have all that built in. And so we are hyper-focused on keeping you compliant in all 50 states and allowing you to reach your goals post-COVID to do that. And so just to give you a scene of what that would potentially look like through that single interface, you've got the ability to have paper checks, and we'll help you eliminate those over time. You have direct deposit and ACH, so we can handle all of those for you. We provide the digital payments with Wisely. We provide financial wellness tools, including alternative banking, spending and budgeting, savings tools for your employees, right? And some of those other tools. And then if you want, you can actually layer on things like earned wage access, early pay. People call it anytime pay, but you can layer that solution on top of this platform as well. And what I will tell you, the nice thing as you look to maybe make some of these transitions is, again, not only do we have the solution in place, but we'll provide field support. And our field support team is designed to help you with the rollout. So again, it's one thing to buy a system. It's another thing to try and roll this out on your own. We actually have a team that will work directly with you to help with the rollout. And then the other benefit is, as an organization, if you look to make this move to electronic and digital pay, and whether that's driven by business reasons or business reasons combined with what's happened with COVID, the benefits to organizations is a streamlined payroll and HR process, improved benefits to your employees, and an overall reduction in real costs to your organization, because you're going to save on shipping, you're going to save on banking fees, you're going to save on production fees as well. And so again, the nice thing is you can make this transition. ADP certainly has a solution that's pre-built for Infor to work with you. We're going to provide a complete and robust platform to do that, and we're going to save you time and streamline the processes as well. And again, guys, part of what's crucial to this whole thing is having the Wisely Pay platform, which is our own processing platform. It's connected to Apple, Google, and Samsung. It's compliant in all 50 states when combined with Wisely Check and our other solutions to help you move to digital. And again, it has, at the highest level for your employees, it has the most surcharge-free options for them to utilize their pay of anyone in the industry. But it also comes with those simple and easy tools to use to allow you to help your employees make this transition. The position pay is a benefit, and to show that coming out of COVID, you're concerned and addressing both the physical wellness of your employees as well as the financial wellness of employees, and to show your stakeholders and your executives that coming out of COVID, you've taken the steps to shore up your payment method, to add the flexibility to disaster recovery, and we can help you develop those business continuity plans and streamline all of this through our partnership with RPI and leveraging the Infor systems combined with ADP. So again, I know this is not live Q&A, but if there are chat questions that have come up, we'll do our best to try to address those now while we have a few minutes. And I'll turn, since I'm not sharing, I'll turn my webcam on. I apologize. I'll tell you a couple of the questions that I've gotten around this. And when we do these presentations is we do get a lot of questions around compliance. And is it really 50 state compliant? And so what I will tell you is that the key to 50 state compliance is options, and it's pay options. And so, as I said, you can't simply offer checks and direct deposit and then go checks, direct deposit, or pay card and then eliminate the checks. Most states require that you provide options for checks, direct deposit, and for the digital wallet / pay card. And so what's nice at ADP is that we have this check component completely removed from the pay card. And while the take rate on that is extremely low, what it does do is it does provide that compliance piece to help you make that transition. And so we get that question quite often. The other question that I've gotten recently is, what changes in legislation are we seeing from the states? And I can tell you, pre-COVID, there were a number of states, New York being one of them, that were really starting to put pressure on organizations with how much they could push a digital pay option to their employees. And so what we're seeing is we haven't seen a shifting of that, those regulations, but we expect to see that. And the example I'll use is we called on a large city that was thinking about banning businesses from going cashless. So they were making businesses handle cash because they said, hey, it's not fair to our employees. And they had a citizenship that had about 15% unbanked across their citizens. And they said, we've got to be able to accept cash. That same city has spent a couple hours with us discussing what would it look like to provide some options to their citizens who maybe struggle with cash or with banking, so that they could allow business to go cashless. Because on top of, kind of the business benefits of it, this COVID impact had really shifted their focus on that. And that's that concern with their citizens and their safety that's pushing that. So we are seeing that, and the wheels of government sometimes move slowly, but we expect that there'll be a lightening of that, or there might be some flexibility to help organizations make this transition and offer these things in a more efficient way. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those on the chat, and I'll be here for a few more minutes to help answer those for you. I got a reminder too. When we look at this digital world, and I always have organizations question how popular are digital wallets, how popular are pay cards, what's going on out in the world today. I think if you haven't seen the ads or you haven't seen what's going on out there, there's this thought process of what's called a challenger bank. And so a challenger bank was a concept that came out in the UK, certainly has come here to the United States, but a challenger bank was traditionally a technology only bank that competed against traditional brick and mortar banks for their business. And so what we now consider a challenger bank in the United States is things like Wisely Pay is considered a challenger bank because it provides all of the tools, bill pay, ATM access, the ability to buy online, all of the things that someone needs, remote check deposit, all of that. And so it can be an alternative bank. But the other thing that's really happened is companies say, well, I don't know if my employees will adopt this. Well, there's things like Chime Bank and there's a number of Voya, SoFi. These are all banks that have come out that are challenger banks, non-brick and mortar banks that are leveraging technology to help people. And so we're seeing that anywhere to 3 to 8% of your employees have already adopted one of these direct-to-consumer options. And you wouldn't know it as an organization because it goes in your system as a ABA and routing number. But those features are already out there. So companies always say, well, should I just let my employees do that? You certainly can, but you have no control whether they do that or don't do that. And what we're seeing is if you're interested in this concept of a challenger bank and getting those benefits, then working with a company like ADP allows you to have an employer-sponsored option to be able to do all that. And again, I think the key to that is helping you with the marketing. How do I market those benefits to my employees? And having things like flexibility and early pay and helping them reduce fees and providing those tools can really help you attract and retain your associates. And listen, coming out of COVID, we were already seeing the shift in generations to the next gen workers. Next gen workers do not want to receive a paper check from you or even hear that as an option. And so again, this is a chance coming out of COVID to get the benefits we discussed, but also show that, hey, we're keeping up with technology and we're offering those perks and that technology to our next gen workers. And doing all that. So there's just a lot going on in this industry. And I think as you dig into this, if you haven't looked at this in a while, it's a great time to look at it. There's so many benefits that you can have. And again, I think the wind's at your back because again, what's happening is your employees have an expectation that you're going to be making some changes to the pay cycle based on COVID. And so you can use this as a natural event to relaunch these programs or to go out there and select one of these programs to help you drive to those paperless initiatives. And again, there's huge benefits to your employees, but understand as an organization, you're still going to get streamlined processes and you're going to get reduced costs. And you get all that. So you can improve your company, save money, shore up disaster recovery and all that, and benefit your employees. And so again, I would encourage you, I know you probably got a million things to do coming out of COVID, but take a look at that. Explore, if you want to explore it with RPI and us at ADP, we're happy to do that. If not, then I would encourage you to go out there, do some research on the internet, see what's out there. While I represent Wisely Pay and we use it as a family and my boys have it, I have it. I'm also a card holder for several of those other cards, just to keep up with what's going on in the industry. And it's really changed quite a bit. And even myself, I'm almost 50 years old and traditional banker with one of the major banks. I thought, wow, it's not that far off that I could see me shifting everything off of traditional banking, going to one of these alternative solutions myself. Well, guys, I think that's bringing us almost up to the time. I know there's more sessions. I hope you got out of this what you were looking for. Hopefully, I gave you some insight to what's out there. The offer I've made on my LinkedIn profile, and I'll make to everybody on the phone here today, is that my email is Jeff, Jeff.gies, as in Sam, GIES, @adp.com. If you're looking for information, if you're struggling coming out of COVID, if you're struggling in the midst of COVID right now, and you want to have a conversation unrelated to sales, meaning not talking about ADP and what we can do and how we sell, but you just need help in the digital world, you have questions about compliance or you have other questions, please email me. I'll send you my cell phone number if you email me. I would be happy to share with you everything that I know about the industry, everything I know about rules and regulations. If I don't have the answers, I certainly have the resources to get those for you. So please Not a sales call, but if you need help, if you need support, if you need information, I am happy to provide that. And again, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, you'll see that offer out there. If you're not, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to expand my network. But again, anything I can do to help you, I will. Good luck with all of this. Stay safe, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of the conference here today. Thanks so much.